Yes. Hello. According to Wikipedia, King Kong versus Godzilla is the most watched movie franchise in Japan. This is a fun fact. In my talk today, I have two objectives. Number one, I want to give you a brief technical overview, a comparison between the OpenID trust chain and the x.509 certificate chain. What is the OpenID trust chain? This is the central character, the main hero, in the new standard that is being developed at the OpenID Foundation for Federations. My second objective, the second topic of this talk, is given the 10-year anniversary of OpenID Connect, is going to be about the magic and the unintended uses and consequences of computer standards. Okay. Now, x.509 has become quite a monster, hidden in plain sight. Now, if I reach into my pocket where my credit card is, there is a chip in here, and inside this chip, there is an x.509 certificate. So everybody here has one in his card. And there are probably billions of cards around the world with such certificates inside. Okay, then I reach into my other pocket where I have my mobile phone. And inside my smartphone, there are at least a dozen root certificates in the operating system, in the browser, and probably a whole other bunch of certificates in the various applications that I have installed. So x.509 has become quite a big thing. Was this success actually envisioned by the people who devised this standard? And the answer is probably not. Why? Well, if we consult the history, we'll find out that x.509 became a standard in the year 1988. So this is actually several years before the World Wide Web was invented, before the browser was invented, before XML was invented, before the whole notion of APIs and even the JSON Web Token were invented. Yeah. But what were the hot things in that period? Okay, one of the hot things was the ASN.1 binary encoding. Why? Because in the 80s, big data was measured in megabytes, and network speed and bandwidth was measured in kilobits. So people needed a very efficient binary encoding, which made it into the x.509 certificates, and which make them so hard to debug sometimes. Now, why did the x.509 certificate become so successful? Despite the fact that it wasn't actually designed for SSL or TOS. And it has to do with keeping things simple, embracing a concept that is very easy for people to understand. So what is the certificate? It is a very simple binding, cryptographic binding between a name. This could be the name of a website and a public key. And these bindings can be chained all the way up to a trusted certificate authority. So if you have an application that receives such a certificate, then you know, oh, I can trust this public key. And then with this public key, what can you do? You can verify signatures. You can create a symmetrically encrypted channel between your web browser and some web server. Now, if we double-click on the certificate, we'll find that the structure of the certificate is fairly simple. So what do we have there? We have two fields that tell us who the issuer is and who the subject is. The subject being the holder of the public key. Then we also have another pair of fields which specify the validity time window. We also have a thing called constraints. Now, software usually ignores the constraints, but sometimes when you try to actually verify certificates with constraints, they might crash. And obviously, you have the public key embedded in the certificate. So very simple structure. But this was essential to make it the success that it is today. Now let's fast forward 36 years into the future. So we are in the 2010s. So now we have the JSON Web Token, we have the OpenID Connect being a standard. And one of the persons involved in the OpenID Foundation, his name is Roland Hedberg, he is from Sweden. And he has been dealing with the problem of how to create federations that include OpenID providers and OpenID relying parties. And the point of the federation is to establish trust between all these entities so that relying parties can trust the OpenID provider that the user has chosen to authenticate. And in this trust chain, when you look inside a trust chain, it is actually composed of JSON Web Tokens, the JOTs that Nasa Kimura and Mike talked about this morning. Now, when we look at the structure of the JSON Web Tokens, we actually see similarities between the x.509 certificate and the structure of x.509 certificate, and the JSON Web Token. So we have the same fields that designate the issuer, the subject. We have a validity time window. We also have these constraints. But we also have a bunch of fields which were not present before. Okay, we have a field which is required for the metadata. And the metadata is in there so that relying parties with the OpenID provider by presenting the trust chain. Then we also have metadata policies. Now, the trust anchor, the authority might want to assert or define policies in order to make the entities, for example, comply with the FAPI profile, right? And we also have a bunch of embedded JOTs which can be thought of as accreditations, which are called trust marks. So they provide an additional dimension. And we have the JSON Web Keys. Now, could this structure have emerged if OpenID Connect did not specify 65 metadata parameters? because I've counted them all? Well, probably not. So this was an interesting, I believe, this was an interesting, perhaps, thing that happened and actually caused the trust chains to become what they are. And this is quite useful. This table summarizes the main differences between x.509 and the OpenID trust chains. I will point out two very important things that are not obvious by looking at the previous slides. Number one, the trust chains enable much more complex trust relationships to be represented. Things like multilateral federations. And they also enable the insertion of trust marks. And this is good because it gives security architects the ability to sort of represent and express real-world trust relationships. And what else? If you remember, x.509 was designed in the 80s. In the 80s, we did not have the World Wide Web, we did not have web APIs. So here is another very crucial benefit that you get with the trust chains, because you have a well-known URL and a bunch of very useful web APIs. You are able to automatically and in real time build a trust chain for an entity and also do things like, okay, I want to go and talk to this authority and I want it to give me a list of all its subjects. So what you can do with these APIs, you can actually crawl the entire tree of trust relationships. And at present, this is not really possible with the x.509 certificates. Okay, so this is the present. And now let's fast forward another 10 years. So let's imagine that now we are in the year 2035. Elon Musk has finally gotten humanity on Mars. And the other significant news of that year is that TOS has released a new version of the standard, that is TOS 2.0. And what happened in that year? The working group decided to replace the x.509 certificate chain with the trust chain. So, wow. And, okay, now we are in January 2035. And let's go and open up the OpenID website. And just like yesterday, the OpenID Foundation board had its meeting in Tokyo, and they decided to switch the OpenID website to the new TOS version. And we go to the website, we double-click on the padlock, and wow, we see new things. Now, what are these things? Okay, we can still see that the domain is being validated by Let's Encrypt, so this has not changed. Yeah, it's still there, but we see other strange things now. Because I said that with Federation, OpenID Federation, you can have an entity simultaneously be part of multiple federations. The OpenID Foundation has become a part of another trust chain. And that's because in the year before that, in 2024, the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service of the United States has decided to become a trust anchor. So every company or non-profit in the States that is registered can automatically also enroll its public keys. And when it does that, what happens? The websites, when you click on the padlock, you can immediately see what the legal entity is behind the website, and you can find things like tax number, when the organization was registered, etc. So what does it do? This gives you extra trust. And that's why when you look at the top, it doesn't say connection security anymore, just connection security. It also says trust, so things have shifted. And okay, the OpenID Foundation board has also decided to include a bunch of trust marks in its chain. For example, the foundation has a bank account, and it has decided to include a trust mark issued by the bank saying that, okay, these guys have an account with us, so yeah, let's include this. So people can trust us a little bit more. For instance, other accreditations like being ISO 27000 compliant, being carbon neutral, and yes, the staff at the foundation underwent Mars survival training and also received a certification for that. Okay, but remember, this hasn't happened yet. I'm talking about the year 2035. On this slide, you will see a diagram which explains this fictitious trust chain for the OpenID.net website in the year 2035. So we're not talking about today. So with that, I will finish my talk. Thank you very much.